two kinds of people in this world. The first kind lives in long pause, stable job for decades, fixed personality, predictable life trajectory. If that's you, this probably isn't your video. The second kind lives in fast forward, shedding entire identities every few years, outgrowing belief systems overnight. And the world still relates to who they were 3 years ago. If you're the second kind, keep watching. If you're a deep intuitive, someone who's introspective and perceives the complex layers of reality behind the visible. If you're an INFJ, INTJ, INFP, or INTP, this is your reality. You transform at a pace most people can't comprehend, and the world keeps telling you something's wrong with you for it. But you're not broken, you're just changing faster than the world can handle. Recently, I made a video called Why You Keep Abandoning Everything You Build. The core idea is deep intuitives are the sea, not the castle. You flow through cycles every 3 to 7 years, building entire worlds, living in them fully, then leaving them behind when they no longer contain who you're becoming. Hundreds of you said it finally explained a pattern you'd lived, but never understood. Link below if you missed it. But what I want to show you today are the deeper signs you're in this process, not the obvious signs like changing work or cities. These signs will reveal if you belong to the type who doesn't burn bridges out of immaturity, but leaves because you've matured beyond what used to contain you. The old structures can't fit who you're becoming. This happens in cycles, and this kind of transformation creates friction with people who expect you to stay the same, which often turns into criticism, sometimes even attacks. People often call deep intuitives unstable, inauthentic, which is ironic, calling the most authentic types inauthentic. But here's what they can't understand. You don't wear the mask of fixed personality that comforts society, what Jung called the persona. You're honest about your actual self, which updates regularly based on what you learn from experience. And most importantly, you dare to express those updates to the world. That's what makes people uncomfortable. Because here's the thing, deep intuitives are rare, but they're not abnormal. The issue is that society defines normal by majority, not by understanding how different cognitive functions actually work. So these 7 signs, they're not problems to fix. They're patterns to recognize. And if you're a deep intuitive, you don't just want to know what's happening. You need to understand why. Stay until the end, and I'll give you the psychological explanation. Let's begin. First sign, old dreams feel like old clothes. Your old dreams feel like clothes that don't fit anymore. Remember that career path you were certain about? That relationship ideal you were chasing? That lifestyle you were building toward? Now they feel like they belong to someone else. You can barely remember why those things mattered. You've shed an entire identity, and everyone's still asking about dreams that died quietly while you became someone new. You outgrew your aspirations faster than you could achieve them. Second sign, conversations feel like time travel. Most conversations feel like you're being pulled backward in time. You sit with old friends and realize they're having the same conversations as last year, same complaints, same circular thoughts, same unresolved problems. You've already thought through it all, dismantled it, integrated it, moved on. You're 3 paradigm shifts ahead. So you perform. You regress to maintain connection. You talk about things that no longer interest you because meeting them where you actually are would create a gap too wide to bridge. You feel lonely in rooms full of people who supposedly know you. Third sign, your decisions come from deeper inner logic. Your decisions come from somewhere else now. You used to need external validation, advice from friends, research, pros and cons lists, permission. Now, you just know. Not through analysis, through some internal compass that developed its own authority. People think you're being impulsive. What's your backup plan? Have you thought this through? And you can't explain that you've thought it through on a level they don't access yet. You're operating from a different layer of consciousness, which makes your choices look irrational to people on the surface. Fourth sign, old triggers don't pull the same way. Things that used to destabilize you don't have power anymore. That criticism that would spiral you for days, You hear it without your nervous system hijacking you, that rejection that felt like proof of unworthiness, just information now. That family dynamic that pulled you into old patterns, you observe it without getting caught. This isn't numbness, it's integration. You've done shadow work, faced the parts giving those triggers power. People try pushing your old buttons. Nothing happens. Those buttons don't exist anymore. You've rewired your emotional architecture. Fifth sign, you're grieving people who are still alive. You're experiencing loss with people who are still physically present. You're mourning friendships that technically exist, family connections intact on paper, but emotionally, you've already lost them, not through death or conflict, but because you've changed so much. The bridge between who you are now and who they think you are has collapsed. You sit across from them and feel absence. Talk, but nothing lands. Share, but nothing connects. You're experiencing a unique loss, losing connection with someone right in front of you. Nobody teaches you how to grieve that. Sixth sign, you see your past self without flinching. When you look back, you don't cringe anymore. You used to avoid old photos, old posts, old versions of yourself. The embarrassment was too sharp. How could I have been so naive? But now, you see that person with compassion. You understand why they made those choices. You see the pain they carried, the limited tools they had, the best they could do. You don't need to disown them. You've integrated them. They're not separate. They're the foundation you built yourself on. This is true transformation. Not rejecting your past self, but holding them with tenderness while knowing you'll never be them again. Seventh sign, you've quietly crossed a line you can't uncross. Somewhere along the way, you crossed a threshold you can never return from. You can't name when it happened, maybe a specific insight, maybe accumulated over months. But you know with absolute certainty, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you've learned, can't unsee the patterns, can't return to comfortable ignorance. Even if you wanted to, the door behind you has disappeared. This isn't dramatic, it's quiet, permanent, irreversible. You've changed in a way that fundamentally altered your relationship with reality. This is the loneliest sign, and the most liberating. We've just explored the 7 signs. If they hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more content for deep intuitives who refuse the surface. Now, if you're still here, you've proven what I already knew. You need to understand why. So let me tell you. If most of these signs resonate with you, you're experiencing what Jungian psychology calls accelerated individuation. Jung wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. In other words, becoming who you truly are. Not who your family wanted, not who society says you should be, but the unique self that was always underneath the expectations. For most people, this happens slowly, over decades. Many never individuate at all. They live and die as copies of their parents, their culture. But deep intuitives, you individuate at a different pace. Once you glimpse who you could become, you can't unsee it. You start dismantling everything inauthentic at a speed that terrifies people around you. This is why you're changing faster than the world can handle. You're not just growing, you're actively becoming. And here's the deeper truth about why this happens to you. By being oriented inward and perceiving through intuition, deep intuitives operate like the sea. You perceive reality as movement, as layers, as patterns beneath the visible surface. You sense the currents before they become waves. You see connections and complexities that haven't yet materialized into concrete form. You relate to the world as a vast, interconnected flow. Most people operate like the castle. They perceive reality as solid, fixed, already built. They see what's in front of them, what can be touched, what has clear boundaries and stable form. The sea cannot remain in the castle. Your way of perceiving, fluid, deep, constantly integrating new patterns from beneath the surface, will always outgrow rigid structures. This is why you transform at a pace others can't comprehend. But here's what nobody tells you. Consciousness expansion is irreversible. Every time you integrate shadow, question inherited beliefs. Choose authenticity over comfort. You expand your consciousness. And you can't unsee what you've seen, can't unknow what you've learned, can't return to the smaller version that fit easily into other people's lives. This is why conversations feel like time travel, why old goals feel irrelevant, why people accuse you of changing too much. You've expanded beyond the boundaries that used to contain you. The world is still operating at the level you've grown past. Now, if you're still here and you're even more curious about the actual mechanism behind this at a technical level, I'll give you a bonus explanation. But if you're already satisfied with the why and want to skip straight to the practical guidance, just jump ahead. I won't be offended. The timestamp is below. Here's how it works mechanically. 1. Deep internal unconscious compression. All 4 deep intuitive types, INFJ, INTJ, INFP, and INTP, rely on a dominant introverted function that gradually compresses information over time. Introverted intuition, introverted feeling, introverted thinking. These functions gather experience silently, condensing it into deeper models, values, or logical structures. 2. Activation of the accelerator function. Each type has a secondary function that pushes rapid outward change once the internal shift locks in. For INFJs, extroverted feeling accelerates new priorities and boundaries. For INTJs, extroverted thinking accelerates decisions and execution. For INFPs, extroverted intuition accelerates exploration and new possibilities. For INTPs, extroverted intuition accelerates system redesign and experimentation. Once the dominant function decides, the auxiliary function moves quickly. 3. Threshold moment. When compressed internal processing reaches critical mass, the system clicks. Everything reorganizes rapidly. The pattern is discovered. The change feels sudden because the insight emerges fully formed. 4. Immediate identity reweighting. After the threshold, your mind quickly redistributes energy. It drops what no longer fits. Old goals lose their charge. Old habits lose their purpose. Old identities lose their power. This happens almost overnight. 5. New internal model replaces the old. The dominant introverted function produces an updated internal map. The new model becomes default immediately. This makes the old self feel outdated almost overnight. That's the mechanism. That's why you change so fast while others stay the same for years. If you made it this far, write bonus in the comments so I know you're part of the tribe that can't live without understanding the system. Now that you understand both why this happens and how it works, here's what you actually do with this knowledge. First, stop apologizing. Stop feeling guilty for evolving. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Second, accept the cost. Rapid transformation brings loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone, but of being misunderstood, of being ahead, of being between who you were and who you're becoming. Third, find your people, not who knew you before, people who meet you where you are now, other deep intuitives, other people changing too fast for the world. Build those connections deliberately. They're rare. Fourth, trust the process. This rapid change isn't chaos. It's your psyche reorganizing around truth, around authenticity, around who you are meant to be. The world will catch up, or it won't. Either way, you can't stop becoming yourself to make others comfortable. So, which sign hit hardest? Drop a comment. And if you want even deeper explorations, I write long-form essays for deep intuitives on my Substack. Link in the description. You're not broken for changing this fast. You're awake. And once you're awake, there's no going back to sleep. And always remember, you're the sea, not the castle.